We had hardliners, of course, at the end of the George W. Bush senior administration, and I ran into them in a hard way because when I advised Poland, I knew a lot about how to end a financial crisis, and I made good recommendations, and they worked. But what was fascinating for me, and I didn't understand it at the time, is every recommendation I made was accepted by the White House almost immediately. It was weird. One day I raised $1 billion for Poland, literally from morning till night, because I said so. And they said, well, do you think this will work, Mr. Sachs? And I said, this is the right thing to do. And by the end of the day, the billion had been raised for a currency stabilization fund. And I patted myself on the back. God, am I good, you know? And then 2 years later, when I made very similar recommendations for Yeltsin's government, every single one of them was rejected. And I thought, but come on, you just saw in Poland why this works, how it works, and so forth. I didn't really get at the time that I was playing economics and they were playing geopolitics. I was trying to help salvage a collapsing economy, and they were playing the board game Risk. Put your pieces on as many places on the board as you can. And I didn't really understand it at the time because I thought we were having an economics discussion and debate. But the point is that as of the mid-1990s, the original neocons on the Republican side, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, they had their counterparts on the Democratic Party side because this isn't really partisan. This is elite U.S. politics. Madeleine Albright was a hardliner. Her vision was Central Europe's my place, my home, and Russia's the enemy. And Zbig Brzezinski was definitely not a lover of Russia, I would say. And so the debate ensued, and Clinton was kind of a weather vane and a political such a political freak. He wanted to win elections, and he felt that going with NATO enlargement was the right way to go. He sided with Albright and his Secretary of Defense at the time, really a gentleman and a decent man, Bill Perry, wrote in his memoirs 20 years afterwards that this was completely distressing to him, that he knew this was the wrong way to go, that this was going to inflame a crisis with Russia that was just being tamped down, that he was making his relations with his Russian counterparts, it was working. They were building a new kind of peaceful and trusting relationship, and this was going to blow the whole thing up. But Albright and Holbrooke and the other hardliners, and Clinton, very typical of him, by the way. Anyway, he went with it, not really thinking much about the consequences. To my mind, our greatest historian statesman of the age, really a man of unbelievable knowledge and judgment, was George Kennan, who ironically was the author of the original containment, but he meant it in a completely different way from the version that was actually implemented, a non-military kind of approach. George Kennan knew immediately this is a massive debacle, and said so famously in 1997, that this is the new Cold War with Russia. So I watched all of that taking shape with horror because I obviously knew people on both sides. I thought this was a dreadful mistake. But then the George W. Bush administration got worse. 9/11 freaked the U.S. out, and everything went haywire. But the neocons really took over, led by Cheney, of course. And NATO enlarged 7 more countries by 2007, including to the Black Sea with Bulgaria and Romania, including to the Baltics. This is getting pretty damn close. And then in 2008, was Bush's completely provocative, unnecessary, extraordinarily dangerous insistence that NATO commit to enlarging to Ukraine and to Georgia, really in a way fulfilling the plan spelled out cleverly in Zbigniew Brzezinski's 1997 book on the grand chessboard, where he said, you corner Russia, you end Russia's power and influence, and you basically have the linchpin to controlling Eurasia. And so that, I think, was the vision of the neocons. And President Putin, who was basically pro-European when he came into office, said in 2008 at the Bucharest Russia-NATO meeting, which followed one day the NATO summit in Bucharest, he told Bush, you do this, I take back Crimea. You know, don't play this game. And to my mind, all of this was already extraordinarily dangerous. Then Obama came in, and like everything in the US, he got pulled into the same neocon orbit. I don't think it was his instinct or his knowledge, but he was very inexperienced. And Hillary Clinton was part of that. And of course, Victoria Nuland, who we've come to know so well during all of this period, started to guide policy. And I think when you look back, clearly, the Yanukovych period is extraordinarily interesting and important in this story, because Yanukovych actually rather cleverly and skillfully was trying to keep some kind of foothold and balance in the midst of this emerging great power confrontation over his country. And so Yanukovych wisely said, we stay neutral. Wisely said, Russia keeps its claim on the Crimean naval base dating back to 1783. Don't topple this. And Yanukovych was in a way, and I think in retrospect, with a lot of skill actually, was maintaining some kind of very fragile equilibrium. But the neocon, the neocon gears were turning, and of course, the U.S. Helped to play into, stoke, and God knows what else, and we don't know all the details, to overthrow Yanukovych in February 2014. And the war started at that point. And the war started because the equilibrium, which was extraordinarily fragile at that point, collapsed. And we've been at war now for 8 years, and it's absolutely a disaster. And first and foremost, a complete tragedy for Ukraine, but a disaster for the world.